All right, let's just get right into it. Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're tackling something that probably sits in the back of your mind every single time you open a screen. I'm skipping the usual long intro today because honestly, we need to get straight to a pretty uncomfortable truth. Look, nobody, and I literally mean nobody, likes the idea of having thoughts planted in their head, right? We all have this deeply rooted fear of the herd mentality. We really want to believe that we're independent thinkers just navigating the world totally on our own terms. But when you look around at the sheer overwhelming volume of messaging thrown at us every single day, man, it's hard not to wonder if our consciousness is truly our own or if it's kind of just being quietly manipulated by outside forces. So that brings us to the core of what we're unpacking today. How does this manipulation actually work? And maybe more importantly, who exactly is falling for it? It's a pretty stark question, and I want you to actively think about it as we go through this material. Like, who is actually vulnerable to this constant, overwhelming barrage of modern media? We tend to think it's always someone else, right? The uninformed, the gullible, the folks who just aren't paying attention. But as we're going to see, you might find that the answer to who is really being influenced is, well, it's a lot closer to home than you think. To really wrap our heads around where we are right now, we kind of need to do a little time traveling. Let's step back 31 years to start. Section 1, View from 1995, the ad attack. Okay, picture it. Back in 1995, traditional advertising was absolutely peaking. And to the people living through it, it felt like this inescapable assault from literally all directions. Billboards, TV commercials, radio spots. You just couldn't escape the whole shebang. And because of that environment, we make this massive assumption about that era, and frankly, about advertising in general. We tend to think that a multi-million-dollar ad campaign is just this unstoppable brainwashing machine. But here's the thing. The source material makes a really profound observation here. The true power of a campaign isn't actually determined by the amount of money thrown at it. A massive budget does not automatically equal massive influence over your individual mind. So, if it isn't the budget doing the heavy lifting, what actually makes an ad successful at manipulating us? Well, that brings us to Section 2, the secret of influence, lack of opinion. It turns out the secret of influence isn't in the cleverness of the copywriter or the size of the production budget. Your true vulnerability to any message is simply the absence of a pre-existing opinion. It's that empty space in your mind. Think about it. If you haven't taken the time to form a stance on a specific topic, you're basically leaving the front door wide open. When you don't have a stance, the message just infiltrates your subconscious with zero resistance. You might not even realize you're being persuaded. But on the flip side, when you already hold a firm, value-based opinion, the external noise simply bounces right off of you. It doesn't matter if the ad is trying to sell you something totally mundane like Coca-Cola or push some highly curated, trendy lifestyle. If your internal foundation is strong, the influence of that outside message is just completely neutralized. So, the big question is, how do we actually build that armor? Our source outlines a really practical three-step process. Think of this as your human-centric defense mechanism for escaping that herd mentality. Step 1, form an opinion. Don't just passively absorb things, actively decide what you think. Let's say you see some flashy campaign for a new health supplement. Instead of just impulsively buying it, pause and form an opinion. Step 2, examine it. Ask yourself, wait, do I actually believe I need this, or did I just read it online? And finally, step 3, check its foundations. What core values actually support this? Maybe you value natural health over quick fix pills, right? When you walk through these 3 steps, you're forging an internal shield, one that lets you face an outside world full of powerful, well-funded interests without getting completely swept away by them. All right, let's fast forward to today. Section 3, View from 2026. The AI trap. Those massive advertising fears we had back in the 90s? Yeah, they completely pale in comparison to our current reality. Back then, ad attacks were, well, they were blunt. You knew you were watching a commercial. It was super obvious messaging trying to sell you a soda or a car, so you could easily put your guard up. But in the 2026 AI era, the landscape didn't just evolve, it literally mutated. We've gone from just being sold products to having our very perception of reality challenged. We are dealing with hyper-realistic, completely indistinguishable fakes. Distinguishing truth from fiction is now harder than ever before in human history. Advertisements, investment pitches, business opportunities, they look entirely authentic now. Sometimes they even look more convincing than reality itself. Crazy, right? And because of this, we really need to dismantle this outdated stereotype of the naive victim. When everything looks hyper-real, who actually falls for it? Well, smart individuals, experienced professionals, critical thinkers, savvy investors. Basically, absolutely everyone. The source material highlights that almost no one has avoided falling for these highly convincing AI-generated promising businesses and can't miss investments at least once. It's kind of funny in a dark way, honestly. If you think your high IQ or your decades of experience makes you immune, you are exactly the kind of person this new era of manipulation is designed to catch. Now, we definitely have to acknowledge the dual nature of this technology. Look, there is no denying that AI is a monumental engine for human creativity, imagination, and development. It is opening doors we literally never knew existed. But at the exact same time, it serves as the ultimate perfect minefield for those seeking easy money. For scammers, con artists, and manipulators, this is an absolute golden age. They now have the tools to completely bypass your traditional skepticism by creating illusions that are just utterly flawless. Let's pull back for a second and look at the larger timeline here. We just jumped 31 years from the peak of traditional ads in 1995 to an AI era where the line between real and fake is just completely erased. Now, looking ahead to 2057, the unknown future, man, it really makes you wonder. If the technological and psychological landscape shifted this drastically, and honestly, this terrifyingly, in just 3 decades, what unimaginable changes await us in the next 31 years? Like, what will manipulation even look like when the tech is exponentially more advanced than it is today? Which brings us to our final and definitely most important point. Section 4, your last line of defense, the human solution. Facing that unknown future, it's incredibly tempting to just look for a software update to protect our minds, right? We want an algorithm to spot the fake algorithms. But here's the catch. A technological shield will always, eventually, be broken by a better technological sword. Your ultimate defense mechanism against manipulation is actually anti-tech. It is your personal value-based conviction. In a world where absolutely everything on your screen looks completely real, your own deeply rooted identity, your established values, and your personal stance are literally the only things that cannot be spoofed. They are the anchor that keeps you from just drifting with the herd, no matter how convincing the digital mirage appears. I want to leave you with this pretty haunting final thought from our source material. If you don't build it in time, someone else will build it for you. Think about that. If you don't do the hard, quiet work of figuring out what you actually believe, what you actually value, and where you actually stand, an algorithm, an advertiser, or a scammer is going to happily do that work for you. And the scariest part, you won't even notice it happening. So the big question I'm leaving you with today is this. When you close this explainer and look back at your screen, are the convictions guiding your choices truly your own? Or were they just quietly installed while you weren't looking? Really think about that. Keep building your defense, and we'll catch you next time.